Hi, my name is Jon Svitak, attorney with the Shannon Law Group, and our firm helps people across the United States recover financially and emotionally after they experience an injury or side effect due to a vaccine. And we do this by pursuing compensation on their behalf in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So every year, millions of people get their flu shot, and for the majority of these people, they won't experience any side effects whatsoever. However, unfortunately, on a very, very rare occasions, some individuals will develop an autoimmune disorder after receiving the flu shot. The most common autoimmune disorder after a flu shot is called Guillain-Barre Syndrome, or GBS. And GBS has a few different variants that have been recognized to be associated with the flu shot, including acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, and acute motor axonal neuropathy. So what do you need to know about GBS if you're getting your flu shot this year? Guillain-Barre syndrome is a rare inflammatory and neurological disorder that causes the body's immune system to attack its central nervous system. And specifically, it attacks the nerve cells that control coordination and movement in your body. Now, the causes of GBS vary, but the medical community has recognized an association with the flu shot. Now, after you get your flu shot, if you're concerned about Guillain-Barre syndrome, here are some symptoms to watch out for. You're going to experience numbness or tingling in your extremities. So whether that starts in your feet or your hands, you're going to start feeling like you're walking on pins and needles. And this is a progressive condition. So although it may start like that, it might get progressively worse, where now you can't pick your feet up as easily as you were. It's getting harder to stand up from a seated position, or climbing stairs becomes more difficult. If it gets really bad, you may start to experience some difficulty breathing, some difficulty swallowing, or some blurred vision. And if it goes untreated, it may actually result in total paralysis. So if you start to experience those initial symptoms, it's really important to go see a doctor as soon as possible. If you suspect that you have GBS, it's like we said, it's important to go to the hospital right away. When you get there, they'll confirm that you have GBS by doing a lumbar puncture, testing your cerebrospinal fluid. And once it's confirmed, you'll undergo one of two treatments, either plasma exchange therapy or immunoglobulin therapy. And each of these therapies are trying to do the same thing, trying to reduce the inflammation and reduce the attack on your central nervous system. Typically, in either of these therapies, you'll undergo 4 or 5 courses of them over 4 or 5 days or a week. Once that course of treatment is done, that's when the real work starts. That's when you'll be referred out for physical, occupational, and certain times speech therapy. And this is the long road to recovery, where you're going to relearn how to stand, how to walk, how to use your extremities, and how to regain your independence. Depending on the severity of your symptoms, the course of your treatment, full recovery from Guillain-Barre syndrome can vary from 6 months to a year, but most people will make a full recovery. There are some individuals who may experience some residual deficits, some residual pain or some residual weakness. They may not move as well as they did before the flu shot. And for those individuals, unfortunately, that is likely a permanent condition. If you have experienced Guillain-Barre syndrome and you believe that it's related to a flu shot, you do have some legal options. You can pursue compensation through the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. And that's what we do. We file petitions for people who've experienced this injury after a flu shot. If you believe you've been injured by a vaccine, you do have some legal options. What we do is we file petitions for people in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So I do all of our consultations. If you call us and you tell me about potential injury due to a vaccine, I'll ask you some background questions to try and figure out, is this a case that we can take on? But before we even get to the question of, can we establish was your injury the result of the vaccine, we first have to determine whether you're eligible for the program. And there's some requirements before we can even file a petition for you. And the first of those would be, did you receive a vaccine that's covered under the program? So there's a list of covered vaccines, and if you received one that's not covered by the program, unfortunately we can't file a petition for you. The other requirement is that the symptoms of your injury have to persist for at least 6 months before we can file. This is called the severity requirement. If your symptoms did not persist for 6 months, the only other way we can file a petition for you is if you were hospitalized as a result of the vaccine injury and underwent a surgical procedure. Those are the two ways that you can satisfy the severity requirement. The third eligibility requirement is that you received your vaccine within the United States. There's a few exceptions to that rule, but in general, you have to have received your vaccine in the States. Now, if you meet all those requirements, we can go ahead and continue with our consultation to see if it's a case that we can pursue for you. And if it is, what we would then do is start working on your petition. So we would draft your petition with the specific allegations of which condition or injury or diagnosis was caused by whatever vaccine that you received. Now, aside from just drafting the petition, we have to support it with evidence. So we would have to gather all of your medical records, draft some affidavits for you and maybe some family members or friends who are aware of your injury or observed the symptoms of your injury. And then we'd file all of that along with the petition. Once everything that we consider to be supportive of your case has been filed, the government will then begin its review. So somebody from the Department of Health and Human Services will be assigned to review your case, review the evidence, and then come to a determination. Do they concede that yes, this was an injury caused by a vaccine, or are they going to dispute it for some reason? Now, if they dispute the case for a particular reason, doesn't mean that you've lost. It just means that we go in front of a judge and we have to prove it. We have to advocate on your behalf and try and convince the judge that your injury was caused by the vaccine. Now, if we're either successful in doing that or the government concedes that this was a vaccine injury, the next phase of the program is the damages phase, where we determine what compensation you're entitled to. So in general, there are 3 types of compensation. There's out-of-pocket medical expenses, so anything not covered by insurance, co-pays, payments towards a deductible, maybe some medical equipment that wasn't covered or over-the-counter medication, things like that, you can get reimbursed for. If you're out of work because of this injury, any lost earnings, income, wages can be reimbursed through this program. And then finally, there's pain and suffering damages as well. So the pain that you were in during this injury, the impact that it had on your daily life, your activities, your hobbies, all of that goes into determining what your pain and suffering was. And for each of these categories of damages, there's also the potential for future compensation. So if we come to the point where we're going to resolve your case or the judge is going to enter an award of compensation, if you're still dealing with the effects of the injury, the court can consider future compensation as well. So how would you navigate this program? The best way is to hire an attorney. And the reason why it's the best way is because it's free. You don't pay anything to hire an attorney, and you're not going to pay them anything at the end of your case either. There's no contingency fee, there's no retainer, there's no bills. It's completely free to hire an attorney. And it's a good idea too, because these cases can become complicated. In my experience, the government isn't quick to concede on these vaccine injury cases. If they can find a reason to dispute your case, they'll find it. So it's good to have an attorney with you who can negotiate with the government on the value of your case, who can get in front of the judge and convince them this is a vaccine injury. So it's really a no-brainer to hire an attorney to help you with this. If you'd like to learn more about the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program or your rights, I wrote a book about it. It's called Vaccine Injuries: Understanding the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. You can get yourself a free copy of this book by texting VICP to 312-847-2428, and we'll ship you a free copy.